I find a beautiful melodic line in here, but it's there and it's hidden. Hi everyone. Today I'm stepping a bit outside of my comfort zone again. This time listening to Slaughter to Prevail with their song Demolisher from 2020. All I know is that Slaughter to Prevail is a Russian deathcore band based in Orlando, Florida. And all I know about deathcore is that is the genre of music that Lorna Shore plays, sings. And I just did my first listen to Lorna Shore recently, so now this is another point of reference for me. Let's see how it sounds. Headline show, Moscow, Russia. Based in Orlando, says Moscow.
Look into my eyes and say I took you as a fraction. The pleasure I want it as a quality. If that's fit to what you are all the time. Paralyzed, simply up there, bring your fucking self down. There's a line in front of society. Resisting you for world life. Break down the day you fucking fly me. I so sure you are so good. I said that guy losing me. And if you know you're fantastic.
I remember when I listened to Lorna Shore that the drum style made quite an impression on me. The speed and precision. And I guess it's not just limited to Lorna Shore, because I hear the same sort of fast machine gun type drumming here. And so I'm beginning to understand, okay, that's maybe part of this whole subgenre style, but it certainly leaves an impact, even just the drums themselves. And then I'm seeing that the singer is wearing this mask. Well, for me, I'm a bit disappointed that he's wearing a mask, because I would like to see his face and his body as he's singing. So for me, that's a disappointment, although I understand that it's all part of the show. But let's see how this continues. Interesting. Da, 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 dum, bum. I'm hearing that little hidden, tucked away in all the roar and percussion, little hint of a melody. And there's something about it that actually reminds me of Russian classical music and even Russian folk music. There's this deep sadness and soulful element, even in just a few notes. And I've always loved that about Russian music. Well, I understand that deathcore is not necessarily a Russian musical genre, but it's interesting to me to hear that melody, knowing that this is a Russian band. And when that first little phrase came, my first thought was, Rachmaninoff? Or like Rachmaninoff's Vespers or something like that. So interesting to have that be the thought, because this is as far from Rachmaninoff's Vespers in style and mood, musical quality as we could go, probably. And yet, I hear something that immediately links one to the other. This is where it really comes together, where he is singing, and this is interesting to me, as someone unfamiliar with this kind of music, very unfamiliar with this kind of music. As I said, my only other exposure is Lorna Shore, and here in this moment, so he's been singing, roaring, whatever he's doing, and the music has been going on. But then I guess it's these moments where what he's singing, and it's so interesting to me because I don't normally think of this type of sound production as being really musical, tuned, pitch-based. And yet he is incredibly cleanly on pitch. That's interesting. And then when his voice and the melody he's singing, because he is actually singing a melody, when the melody he's singing comes and stacks, coordinates with that da, da, da. I guess that's the thing that suddenly links this sound to the Russian folk or church sound, because there are a lot of those unisons and there's also a lot of this deep sound. Russian music is very much bass oriented. You have a lot of, in fact, if you go on YouTube and just type in basso profundo, you can find most of them are Russians. It just seems to be part of their musical tradition. Basso profundo, deep, deep, deep voices singing way, way down here in places that you never knew the human voice could sustain a smooth note. And so now, as I'm listening to him with this more of a roar style, it is pitched though. And when he comes and sings at the octave or same pitch, melodic shape as those strings or that orchestral sound in the background, that is the moment at which I suddenly say, ah, that is that beautiful melody. And I'm sure most of you might be surprised to hear me, coming from my classical background, with my musical aesthetic and sonic preferences, saying that I find a beautiful melodic line in here, but it's there and it's hidden. Being drawn from some Okay, now I finally get to sing it. Okay, I gotta do this again. I have to watch him sing here for a minute. Just bear with me. That is something. One more time. Right? Watching him, it's so effortless. It's almost like, I don't know, what's he done? Turned his whole throat into, I don't know, one big echoing pipe that the sound just tumbles through. And you see no tension, you see no straining, you see no indication that it could be uncomfortable in any way. So interesting, because, I don't know, most of us probably, if we were to try to create a sound like that, it would probably do us some damage. And this is why, even though I don't feel any sort of personal affinity or any kind of draw towards listening to music like this for my own pleasure, at the same time, I am fascinated by the techniques involved, and I am not at all surprised that a vocalist, a professional vocalist like Elizabeth from Charismatic Voice, has also become so fascinated and sees value in understanding it more. So this is kind of my first time seeing somebody, just for a few seconds, seeing somebody produce that sound. What is he speaking Russian there? It sounds Russian. Okay, the fact that he's even speaking Russian just does something. It's even better that way. I think the Russian language works really well with this. Something about the way the consonants work together. Interesting break. Oh, that's the end of it. Wow. Okay. Let's just back up and watch the ending one more time. I didn't even realize. And that's the end. Interesting. Well, as you know, I'm so unfamiliar with this genre that I don't have the understanding of really what it is to be able to say whether what sounds Russian to me is truly a Russian influence in this particular band drawn from Russian musical tradition, or whether it's part of the entire deathcore tradition, genre, stylistic elements. I don't know. But to me, as I listen to this band, and it's not something that I remember really hearing in Lorna Shore, there are parts that just send me towards the Russian music tradition. As I said, that melody, the idea of him singing in octaves with this melody, and the depth of voice, that how how much weighted this is towards the bass. And he really has a big kind of booming voice, at least sounds like it from what I can tell behind all that roar. and at the same time, in the middle where it was getting into that more percussive and rhythmically dynamic feel, I thought, this could almost be drawn from, well, it was where it's picking up pace a little bit, and the melody was getting a little bit more active. It could almost be remade into a sort of Russian-style folk dance, or at least some folk dance from the Eastern European region. And it's so interesting to me to hear in something as distinctive as this musical style is, elements that I instantly connect to folk and church traditions in the Eastern European part of the world. So interesting to me. And as I said, I don't know if it's truly Russian influence here, or if it's just things that I'm picking up this time around listening to a deathcore piece of music. I don't know. But it's interesting, and it fascinates me. And I'm also really happy that I got to actually see him, clips of him singing and producing this sound. So this was a worthwhile experience for me. And so this was my first time hearing Slaughter to Prevail, a deathcore band with their song Demolisher from 2020. And as I said, it sounds Russian. I'll see you soon.